give your undivided attention and show how well behaved all the Hampshire High School students are. Okay. Mr. Hechler.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be at Hampshire High. When I went to school, they put a lot of emphasis on Latin, and one of my Latin teachers pointed out, when you go to an auditorium, always remember that the word audi means to listen, and tor stands for the bull. So you'll be listening to some bull here in this auditorium. I want to give you an idea about my age. I was born long before the internet was established, and it was very, very difficult to collect information without the internet, which we can do so easily today. And in collecting this information, you have to remember that I was born on September the 20th, 1914, which means that if I could live for 10 months until September of 2014, I'll be exactly 100 years old. And you have to discount that when you hear some of the things that I say. Many years ago, a reporter wrote a story about a Hollywood actor named Clark Gable, who played in a famous Civil War type movie, Gone with the Wind. And he had written a feature story about Clark Gable, and the only thing missing was Clark Gable's age. So the only way before the internet that you could communicate with a Hollywood actor, since they all kept their phone numbers unlisted, was to send a telegram. And so I sent a telegram to Hollywood actor Clark Gable to try to ascertain his age. In those days, you could only communicate by telegram because the internet had not yet been established. So I sent the message, "How old, Clark Gable?" And a message came back within a few minutes. "Old Clark Gable, feel fine. How you?" Which, of course, was a logical answer. But male chauvinists always used to say, there's one quicker way to communicate than by telegram. And these male chauvinists would say, all you have to do is tell a woman and it gets there 10 times as quick. I have to always mention that that's a male chauvinist joke. But I'm hoping to come back here to Hampshire High after I'm 100 years old and I used to say to my classes, "Good morning, boys and girls," but these days it's much more appropriate to say, "Good morning, young men and women." I hope some of you in this auditorium will become teachers in the future, because I can tell you very honestly that teaching is the most rewarding profession that anyone can engage in. And personally, I'm so proud of the former students that come back to tell me about their experiences in my classes. So in short, I'm real glad to be here, and I want to make sure that I can answer any questions that any of you have about World War II. I did not volunteer. I was drafted in World War II, and this happened on the 4th of July, 1942, when Uncle Sam sent me greetings to indicate that I was now a member of that great task force, which was assembled by the Chief of Staff, General George Marshall, who built an army of many million men and women who successfully fought in World War II. It took that many in order to overcome the tremendous power of the German army under the leadership of Adolf Hitler. I had an opportunity to interrogate the number 2 man to Adolf Hitler. Hermann Goering was his name. And at the end of World War II, Adolf Hitler himself was 50 feet underground in a bomb shelter that was so safe that no bomb could penetrate. Goering had been his loyal assistant for many years, and Mr. Hitler had written out an agreement that if he ever passed on, that Goering would take over to be his successor. Goering made the mistake of contacting Hitler and saying, "Since you are out of communication, deep underground, isn't it about time that you let me take over?" This infuriated Hitler, who immediately denounced Goering as a traitor and sent out an execution squad to kill him. One of the execution squad happened to be a friend of Goering and tipped him off about what his orders were. So at this point, Gary decided his life would be safer if he would surrender to the Americans, which he did. And he was sent, first of all, to Luxembourg, and later on, as you probably know, tried and convicted to be hanged at Nuremberg trials. And he beat the hangman by getting a cyanide capsule, perhaps from one of the guards, which enabled him to beat the hangman's noose by committing suicide. But Gary told me a great deal about the organization of the Nazi army and how they built up their strength among the people. In this country, we made many mistakes after World War I. The Prime Minister of France, Clemenceau, and the Prime Minister of England, Lloyd George, were determined to punish Germany so that Germany could no longer have the power to wage war against the Allies in France, England, and the United States. And so, although Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States at that time, had won re-election in 1916 on the slogan, "He kept us out of war." After the British ship Lusitania was sunk by a German submarine with the loss of many American lives, Woodrow Wilson reversed his position and decided to bring the United States into World War I on April the 6th, 1917, which was done. And the popular song at that time was entitled "Over There." Over there, over there, the Yanks are coming, and they will return till it's over there. So we were engaged in World War I, which we never should have joined. I'm so grateful for the chance to be alive at an age approaching 100. I don't have a very good filing system, but my wife Carol is my filer. If I lose anything, I just ask her, and she knows. I'll be glad to try to see if I could answer any questions which the students here at Hampshire High have, either concerning military affairs or political affairs. I want to tell one story about 3 individuals who were arguing one day about which of their professions was the oldest and went back the farthest in history. There was a surgeon, an engineer, and a politician that were having this argument. And the surgeon started out by saying, when the Lord wanted to provide a companion for Adam in the Garden of Eden, the Bible tells us that the surgeon took out one of Adam's ribs in order to create Eve to be a companion in the Garden of Eden. And the engineer said, "Oh, my talent goes back farther than that. When the Lord created the earth and the seas, it took the talent of an engineer to bring order out of chaos, to which the politician said, who do you think created chaos?" And that won the argument. But as I say, you students here at Hampshire High are smart students, if I know anything about the training that you're receiving by talking to some of them. So I would welcome any questions that any of you have to ask. I might start also by saying that my memories of World War II are very sharp, because when I was after I was drafted to serve in the military, I was told to report to the railroad station in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., called Union Station. And we were put on the train to go south. We weren't told where we were going, but we ended up in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where I had my 13 weeks of basic training. All of us who took those 13 weeks of basic training in Spartanburg, South Carolina, during the hottest and most humid summer in history, where our commanding officer, I can still picture him and remember, he was a lieutenant colonel named Snuffy Smith. And Snuffy Smith called us together on the parade ground and said, when you're in my battalion, you can't get away with doing your best. You've got to do better than your best. As a teacher, I knew that was illogical until one night, during the cold of winter, we were sent out on a forced march of 25 miles with full field packs. And for the last 5 miles of those 25 miles, I could not get away with just doing my best. I really had to call on some secret reserve power to enable me to finish the last 5 miles. And I landed about a week after D-Day, which occurred on June the 6th, 1944. It was raining. It was raining hard, and our tents had not yet arrived. One of my fellow soldiers said, we should go to a nearby town and see if you could get an old mattress so we could sleep during all this rain. And I took some French language in high school, but I didn't know very much French. But I went to a nearby town, knocked on the door, and a very well-endowed mademoiselle answered. And I said in my pidgin French, je cherche, which means I'm looking for. And I didn't know the French word for mattress, so I thought it must be something like the English word. And I said, maîtresse, which unfortunately in French means mistress. And so she had a look of some disgust on her face. And when I had asked for a maîtresse, and I thought maybe she did not understand my French, so I elaborated by saying, pour dormir sur, which means to sleep on. And that didn't make it any better. She slammed the door in my face. I never did get my mattress. But if you study a language, you ought to be sure what your words mean before you stumble into that kind of a trap. One of the greatest American generals in World War II was named George Patton, P-A-T-T-O-N. And Patton was such a great general because he told us and all our troops who were fighting in France, your objective is Berlin. If you discover any opposition when you're going east toward Berlin. Ignore it. Let somebody behind you contend with it. Your objective is to keep going east toward Berlin. And Patton always had a big red flag with 3 stars on it, indicating how proud he was of his rank as a lieutenant general. My fellow officers all told me, cover up the insignia on your helmet to show that you are an officer, or else a German sniper will single you out, because their targets were always officers. And when Patton, with his big red flag with 3 stars on it, saw that I had covered up my insignia to show that I was an officer, he stuck his finger in my face and he said, "Are you proud of your goddamn rank?" And I very shakily saluted and said, yeah, sir. And he said, well, take that damn stuff off of your helmet and show you're proud to be an officer, just as I am proud. And he chewed me out. If you're ever chewed out by a man like George Patton, you'll know that you've learned some new swear words. And so naturally I took it off, but when he left camp I put it back on again because I did not want to be singled out by the Germans. Would put people up in trees with spy glasses so that they could tell good targets among the Americans. But I was very proud of the fact that finally we were able, on the 8th of May, 1945, to get that once proud, successful army of Adolf Hitler to surrender. As you know from your history, Hitler and his closest associates committed suicide as the Russians conquered Berlin in 1945. They committed suicide. They did not want to be brought to trial, tortured, and executed by the Russians. But that was an interesting and challenging experience. I've written about 20 different books, many of which have to do with my wartime experiences. The most important single book, which I wrote after World War II, is called Gehring and his gang, which is a story in 1,200 pages of my own personal interrogations of Gehring and the military leaders of the Third Reich. This sells, is 1,200 pages long, and it sells for $70. And I've done a land office business in selling copies of Gehring and his gang to many, many different people. I will donate a personal copy without charge to Hampshire High School so they can see exactly what we were able to learn from these interrogations. There's one very important thing that I want to pass on to you, the students here at Hampshire High School, which is when you are trying to get information from a criminal, it is very, very important not to start your questioning by condemning that criminal, but to establish a line of communication, to feign a false sympathy with that criminal. And I use the word feign, F-E-I-G-N, because that takes a change in your personality. Now, Herman Gehring proved to me that he was not a stupid man. I began to understand how he was able to advance to the second command in Germany. I was very apprehensive when a group of Russian officials heard about that we had control of Herman Gehring, because Stalin, the dictator in the Soviet Union, had already said publicly, these criminals should be shot on sight. And we were very apprehensive when they decided to send a delegation to interrogate Gehring. We were apprehensive that some of them might want to try while they were here to carry out dictator Stalin's orders. This is why I listened. I took a seat right outside of the door when the Soviet representatives were questioning Gehring. I know enough of the Russian language to know that when one of them asked a question in a very angry tone of voice, but Gehring answered, they all broke into laughter. He was enough of a genius, despite being a vicious criminal, to know how to make a joke out of an accusation, which proved to me that he was not a stupid man. He was just a very, very clever person. That gives you a brief idea of what I was doing during World War II. I have a love of music. I know every popular song that was ever written, long before Irving Berlin started writing songs. And when I was in basic training in Spartanburg, South Carolina, all of us wanted to do everything possible to get out of the infantry. We figured this is the worst place to spend the war with the highest percentage of casualties in the infantry. So we were told that we could apply to any officer candidate school that we wanted to, and that was the way to get out of the infantry. So we applied to Coast Artillery Officer Candidate School. By the way, could I tell the Master of Ceremonies that if he wants me to shut up or shorten my talk, that I better shorten it a little bit.
We'll have some time for questions if
Say again?
you want to take some questions now.
All right.
Does anybody have any questions? You can come up to the mic here if you have any questions. Anything about the war, anything about his life experiences?
Well,
We got one here.
Mr. Hechler, how accurate is the depiction of General Patton in the movie relate to your actual experiences with him?
that's a good question. The actor George Scott portrayed Patton in the movie. It is a great movie. It is an accurate movie. You can almost hear the inflection of the voice of the actor George Scott as he portrays Patton. It's a movie which I would strongly recommend. I would strongly recommend to anybody. It's not only accurate, it's believable, and I hope that everyone has an opportunity to get it out of the library, which I'm sure would be able to get you a copy. Thank you for the question. Any other questions?
When you got drafted into the military, how hard was it for you?
What was the question?
How hard was it when you were drafted in the military? I guess the training in the military when you were drafted, how hard was it?
How old? How what?
How hard was the training?
The trade was very, very difficult. And for a teacher, fortunately I've been kept in fairly good shape. I used to be a great tennis player, and I challenged my students. Anybody who could beat me 3 sets out of 5 on the tennis court will automatically get an A in the course. And I was challenged by all the members of the tennis team, and I beat every one of them. I'm proud to say, I'm not bragging about it, I'm just speaking facts. And so I was very lucky to be a good tennis player. I could make that challenge to my students. Any other questions?
I have one. What was it like marching with Dr. King in Selma?
Dr. King is one of the greatest American heroes because he was able to bring freedom to millions of black people. I'm so proud of my relationship with him and so proud of the fact that I was the only member of Congress to march with Martin Luther King from Selma to Montgomery, the state capitol. But let me tell you also that that was the most unpopular thing that I ever did with the voters in my congressional district, who sent me all kinds of critical messages saying, in effect, with all the economic problems that West Virginia had, you went down there to stir up those black people. He used a different phrase than black people. He used that N word. I want to stop and see if I have any other questions.
Throughout your life, what was the hardest thing that you ever did?
What was the toughest thing in your life?
That was the toughest thing in my life, because I knew that it could defeat me at the election, and of course, that's the worst thing that can happen to a political candidate, to be defeated, and that was the most difficult thing, certainly, that ever confronted me. It was a challenge, however, that I could not turn down. A challenge of confidence. Yes?
Any final words of advice for future generations? Anything you want to leave them with?
My advice would be the two most important words that you should follow are truth and justice. Whatever you get involved in or stumble into, always remember, tell the truth and seek justice. Justice is a moral compass which should control the actions of every public official. I hope that some of you will take the initiative to become active in public affairs, to support candidates who represent your point of view, and hopefully to run for office yourself. You don't have to start as I did by running for Congress of the United States. Run for office in your local community. First of all, show your community the principles that you stand for. This will make you and your family proud of you as you grow up and honor you after your death. Once again, I want to thank everyone here at Hampshire High for the opportunity to be here. And I hope after my 100th birthday next September that you'll invite me back again. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hechler, we'd like to say we would like to have you back for your 100th birthday. We would like to throw you a party. Is it September, you say? September, your birthday?
September 20th.
September 20th. We would like to have a birthday party here for you at Hampshire High School.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going back to the third period. Thank you so much for your cooperation.